From EPAWA Weather Consulting, headquartered in North Whitehall, Pennsylvania, this is Weather Weeklies, an informative video of the ins and outs of weather that affect you most in the EPAWA coverage area. The thoughts and opinions expressed in this video are those of the forecaster alone and may not reflect those of the staff of EPAWA Weather Consulting LLC as a whole, nor its constituents. Now, without further ado, here is meteorologist Bobby Martrich with Weather Weeklies.
Hey, good Sunday morning to you. Another edition of Weather Weeklies for Sunday, March 10th. This will likely be the final Weather Weeklies video of the season, and I'm going to go through the next couple of weeks and show you why that is. This is typically a long-range winter-based video blog, and we're very limited in what we see going forward in wintry potential. And we're also going to do a little bit of a recap here of what transpired this winter and what went right, what went wrong type of thing. And we'll do that in the second half of the video. But first, let's get into the long range from this past Friday. We do have the system moving through this morning that is going to, actually once it leaves, it's going to leave very early with just rain. Didn't really amount to as much, so we didn't put a lot of warning out there. There was no snow map, none of that stuff. I know there were some reports of or expectations of 1 to 3, 2 to 4, 3 to 5 inches of snow in those weather apps that people love to use for some reason. That did not materialize, and we didn't think it would, so we didn't really get too crazy with this overnight system. It has now changed to rain just about everywhere, and just ending. A few higher elevations are holding on to some light freezing rain before that ends this morning. But we'll turn a little bit milder today, and then we're going to remain kind of near average or slightly above on Monday. We're going to have one day here, the 12th, that we have a slightly below average day. Not a real big deal as far as temperatures are concerned. You're still in the low to mid 40s for highs. So it's just one day, and then we go back to slightly above average for a bit, and then we have a very warm day actually as we get into Friday, ahead of that next cold front. And then we're going to go to a slightly below average period. Now, this is a little misleading, and I'm going to talk about this here in this video. The 17th to the 22nd is, in fact, a slightly below average period. Now, you may have heard in the previous outlooks that we did, long-range outlooks, we had a little comment on here about flip to spring and when that was post-10th. That has not changed, okay? Now, you're going to say, okay, well, wait a minute. You have the slightly below average period here. Yes, we do, but as far as wintry potential we were talking about, as far as winter storm potential, that we had an opportunity up until about the 10th for that. After that, we flipped to spring, meaning we're not dealing with wintry systems anymore in a large scale across the region. So that is still on track. This slightly below average period is also relative to the time of year. 17th to 22nd is not typically a cold period of time. I mean, every day we're getting the average highs increasing with time. And just about every other day they go up about a degree or so on both the highs and low temperature expectations. I'll show you a chart of that too for different locations in our region here in this video. But that is time limited, 17th to 22nd, and it's just slightly below average. It's not like really, really cold stuff. This is not January relative to January highs. This is relative to the 17th to 22nd normals. So we will be coming out of that between the 23rd and 25th, and then we're going to head slightly above average toward the end of the month and remain that way into at least early April. But I think April is going to be one of those months where it is going to be predominantly slightly above average temperatures throughout the entire month. So it should be a warmer month in comparison to March. Now, we did start off very cold, so we are going to finish this month likely slightly below average across the region, but the above average snowfall indications here were actually from what happened in the first week or so of the month. Okay, so this has already occurred. All right, the snowfall that did fall is above seasonal March averages for what is considered normal for March, and then after that we're slightly above average, and we probably see either very little or no snow at all during the month of April going forward. So let's take a look at these examine these temperature periods going forward. This is today. And with that system moving through this morning, once it ends, we are going to end up in the mid to upper 40s to near 50 degrees. So that will be just very slightly above average today. If you look at Tuesday, with that day, one day I said that would be slightly below average, this is what it looks like. And I want you to get a snapshot of this. This is an ensemble mean at 850 millibars. So that's about 5,000 feet above the ground, or above the surface. So this is what it's showing. And it's showing temperatures at that level, not at the surface, at that level, somewhere in here, -5, -6, -7. Celsius, below average. Okay, this is an anomaly below average. People see these maps and they're like, wow, this is going to be really cold. It doesn't work like that. One, it's at that level, not at the surface necessarily. And two, this doesn't really translate down to the surface in terms of how far below average you're going to be, and it's relative to the time of year, which is the third point. Okay, so this is Tuesday, March 12th. Slightly below average will result in temperatures on Tuesday being about 40, 42-ish, 44-ish north to south for one day. Okay, so that's what you're getting out of this. Okay, the average temperatures are increasing with time. Once we get to March 15th, I picked out 4 reporting stations across the region, and I used Philadelphia, Wilkes-Barre, Allentown, and Newark, New Jersey. And these are the average highs and lows on March 15th, 22nd, 31st, and then April 7th. You can see we're at a steady increase here in temperatures. The average high for March 15th is, high and low is 52.34 in Philadelphia. So you're probably done here. You're done with winter in the Philadelphia area, south and east. The same thing in Newark. You're also done here because I'm not seeing anything that's that far below average. Once that comes in, the 17th and 22nd, see where the averages are? 53.35 in Newark. So if you're slightly below average, that means you're going to have temperatures in the upper 40s for highs. So the only way you can get anything wintry at all is likely going to be something like we just dealt with Saturday night and a Sunday morning, where you have a brief slop to rain event, and that's it. No large-scale winter storms or mostly snow-type storms the rest of the way anywhere, okay? So it looks like you would have to have, if you had any kind of wintry precip, it would have to come in at night, like it did last night. It would have to come in when the temperatures are colder at night. So it has to be perfectly timed and a perfectly tracked system in order for that to happen. And the odds of that are very low. And therefore, we don't think there's going to be any potential here along I-95 and southeast. Might have some slop here in the Lehigh Valley here yet. We can keep them in there in that. But I think more realistically, it's going to be up I-80 north, up here, Wilkes-Barre, northeast PA, far northwestern New Jersey. Could still get into some slop during that period. And even there, it's going to be very marginal and have to be perfectly timed. So the odds of something like this happening are decreasing with time. You see we get to March 31st now, although we are expecting a warmer period here from this point going forward. Temperatures here are in the upper 50s to near 60 degrees in that first week of April in Philadelphia. Same thing here in Newark, and we're in the low to mid 50s elsewhere, mid to upper 50s here in Allentown. So we're going to increase with time, all right? And the odds are going to be less and less going forward. I know we had a very snowy March last year. That is not typical of March to go the entire month like that with these snow chances. So here's what we're looking at next Friday. Very warm. Now this is way above average. This is on this scale in the 13 to 17, plus 13 to 17 at that level. So this is going to result in some 60s showing up here on Friday ahead of that front. And then that colder period looks like this, okay? And it looks a lot like this on Tuesday. It's not much colder in terms of departure from average. This is looking at the 17th, and this lasts through about the 22nd. And again, the 17th, you looked at, well, I don't have the 17th on this list here, but the 15th, you can get an idea of where your average temperatures here at this point. So it's going to have to be something perfectly timed and at night, and it would just be initially before it changed to rain. It's the odds of this thing, you have having a snowstorm in here, which is not modeled, by the way. I'm just saying the odds are low that you're going to get any kind of wintry precipitation out of that. And it's mostly confined to the far northern areas for that to occur. So this period here is 5-6 straight days of slightly below average. So you have temperatures generally in the 40s instead of 50s. Okay, not really conducive for snowfall. And then after that period, we start to turn milder. This is looking at the 24th. It starts to turn milder here at that point. Remaining snowfall projected on the ensembles. Again, they're favoring these areas north of I-78 for any kind of snowfall. But this is a little misleading, too. This looks like, oh, wow, we might have some decent snow up here in northeast PA. Well, this was last night. This did not occur. 3 to 4 inches of snow up here? We didn't have 3 to 4 inches of snow up here last night. Okay, so the ensembles are counting sleet and freezing rain and things like that into this. So, like I said, you could get a crop dusting here. Maybe somebody gets a coating to inch type stuff going over to rain like we just had last night the remainder of the way, and it would be during that week of the 17th to 22nd when it's below average. But I don't see much occurring going forward. Okay, so therefore, we're not expecting to keep there's no sense in me keeping the Weather Weeklies video going after that, because we're going to start flipping into, our mindset is going into spring mode and thunderstorms and all that stuff and warm-ups and spring cleaning and all that kind of stuff. That is coming. Again, that flip to spring that we were talking about after the 10th still occurring. It's just dealing with the wintry systems that we have been dealing with, and we're just killing those off going forward. And it's a very, very low chance of anything happening south of 78, and anything north of 78 would be just minor spreader. Like if you're a snowplow guy, take the plows off anywhere in the region. You can take the plows off, leave the spreaders on though. Up I-80 vicinity and north areas up there could still get something that would require salting. But other than that, I'm not worried about anything as far as winter storms the rest of the way, and therefore we're going to keep this Weather Weeklies video, or we're going to suspend this for the rest of this year. We'll pick it up again in November of next year, ahead of the next wintry threats. So here's the total snowfall in the season. This was just put out from the National Weather Service, and this is the National Weather Service Eastern region that does this, and it gives the total snowfall accumulated this season. And you can look at the scale here on the side here. Most areas, if you take a snapshot of our area, the areas that did the best in terms of above average were anything south of that line. All these areas here were at least slightly above average, and that goes all the way down to D.C., Virginia, places like that too. But southwestern Pennsylvania, or southwestern portions of our coverage area in south central Pennsylvania, northern Maryland, parts of Delaware, southern New Jersey were above average. If you get to Atlantic City, above average snowfall this year. Slightly, but above average nevertheless. You get further north in the interior, we were slightly below average. As a matter of fact, these areas right in here, central New Jersey to the Philadelphia region, were a little bit further below, slightly below average. I got a snapshot of this. This is going to zoom into our area. And again, same areas. These areas out here and south, these were all slightly above average in these areas. It was slightly below average up in these areas, but barely. Okay, so like Allentown's sitting right around 31, 32 inches of snow. Normal's 32.9. Is it that far off? No, but it's still technically slightly below average. The areas that were below average are right in here. Right in here. And those are the ones that got shafted this year. There's an area that gets shafted every single year, but this is really the area that got really shafted with the snowfall this year. Further in the interior, a lot of this, and some of this came in November too, and people want to argue that wasn't part of winter and it shouldn't count. Well, it does count. Snowfall is snowfall, and it will go down in the records as seasonal snowfall for those areas being grouped into as the total of the season, even though the winter itself wasn't exactly what people expected. Now, it wasn't what we expected either. We had the 2014, 2015 winter analog that did very well in November, and the below average temperatures did very well in our area that led to that November 16th snowfall that we had. We also had a very warm December projected based on 2014 doing the same thing. So up through the end of 2018, the 2014 analog worked well. Once we got into January, we were expecting to see some changes during the month, and we had a lot of, if you remember those Weather Weekly videos that we did, I was expecting the stratospheric help to work out, maybe tropical forcing to work out a little bit better, and it just looked good in the long range. We were getting, we were doing the long range outlooks, and we look at two weeks ahead of time and say, oh wow, it looks like it's going to hit, and then we get closer to that period, and then it starts to back off. The models will back off. So we were waiting for something that never really came. It did eventually come, but that came in late February, early March is when we finally got our favorable tropical forcing and enough amplification to get some snow into our region for the second straight year in late winter. But we were expecting this in February. Obviously, this did not work out. It ended up the opposite. Instead of being below average, and it looked like it was going to be below average rate. When we were looking at this in the end of January, we were like, wow, February is going to be a really cold month. Well, that didn't work out either. Okay, and it just kept getting pushed back and pushed back. You can only get it pushed back so much before you have to, give up on that and then realize what's going on with the pattern. And the pattern was, in a typical El Nino anyway, you have an extended Pacific jet stream and an amplified storm track, and it's a very fast, elongated west to east flow, but it's usually further south like this. See, it's over the southern United States. Well, we had that this year with this elongated jet extension, but it was more up here. Okay, so it was forced up further north, and that was a result of different tropical forcing phases mimicking La Nina. The SOI also mimic La Nina at times, and when you have a La Nina pattern, this jet is further north, a little more amplified, but it wasn't this amplified. It was more like kind of flat and like this. Very fast west-east pattern, very progressive pattern. All right, so if you're on the southern end of this, you know, every once in a while you would get some cold shots, but if you're on the southern side of this, you're getting systems that are just cutting to the west here, cutting to into the lakes, and that means we're on the warm side of things, and we have a bunch of slop turning to rain, and that's what we had in the month of January and February. So it really didn't materialize the way we expected it to going into the season with the El Nino. We did have an El Nino pattern. It just doesn't always follow the previous analogs that we look at in the past to say, okay, well, this is what we have now here, sitting here in late October or early November. What years in the past match up to this well? And we picked up several analogs years is what we call them. Picked out several of those analog years and said, okay, well, this is probably, because it's looking like this now, it should do, since it's doing A, it should be doing B, C, and D. Well, it didn't do B, C, and D. It did its own E and made its own analog pretty much. And this jet right here was much farther to the north, and it resulted into not a continuation of the wetter pattern that is normally found across the deep south, was pushed up here in these regions. So we stayed wet. It just, we had the precipitation. It just didn't have the cold with any sense of consistency. At times we did, but you know, a lot of times it was like you antecedent cold air in place. So you started off wintry. You have like a thump of snow in the front, if you want to call it that. Some thumps of snow on the front end, going over to sleet, freezing rain, and then rain, and that was very typical of this year. So a lot of things that we really couldn't have projected until we saw it happening. Once we saw that fast Pacific jet, and then we had some split flows to deal with out in the Pacific, which makes it even more difficult from a modeling standpoint to try to get models to figure these things out. And what looked promising in the longer range got to the shorter range periods, and they really kind of fizzled out. So that's what happened this year. But I mean, a lot of these places, again, we really did finish too far below average. And I know some of that was November, and I know some was late season, but that's all part of the winter totals. So the areas that got shafted were right in here, and also Long Island. But I mean, these areas here didn't really do too well. Interior just slightly below average in terms of total snowfall. But hey, that's what happens. You have in winter. You can try to project these things way out. This is exactly why I don't do the public release of the long range outlooks, is we would have got killed just like everybody else. I mean, it looked promising to me too, and it just didn't materialize. And once we saw that happening, we had to adjust. And it is what it is. But we do think winter is just about over, so it's effectively over for most areas, aside from perhaps something like we saw Saturday night, which is last night. Just a brief onset of sleet and maybe some freezing rain going over to rain. And I think we have another shot of that during that 17th to 22nd time frame when we were slightly below average, but mainly favoring the far northern areas like we saw last night. So snowplow contractors, you're probably safe taking the plows off everywhere, not seeing any plowable events going forward. Keep the spreaders on, though, if in the I-80 vicinity and points north in Pennsylvania, and also in northwest New Jersey. Keep the spreaders on up there, too, if you're a snowplow contractor. It's something you can deal with just salting, and that's it. But I would take the plows off. I think we're safe there. Winter will finish slightly above average snowfall for southern and southwestern areas and slightly below elsewhere. I do think that's going to be a final look at this. I really don't think we're going to be adding to those totals with anything of significance except for maybe far northern areas, and it's going to be very minor if that does in fact happen. Spring temperatures will be consistent from the end of the month onward. I think that last full week of March, straight through the month of April, we will be above average in terms of temperatures. So we're looking at this period coming in here between the 17th and 22nd, again slightly below average, but again average at this time. March 15th is this, and you can kind of meet halfway between March 15th and March 22nd. This is actually right in the middle of that period. Look what the normal highs are: 55, 49, 52, 53. So if you're slightly below average, you're still in the mid-40s here. So it's not going to be cold enough really to do anything as far as snow. Even if you have something perfectly timed coming in here at night, you see what the lows are: 36, 29, 31, 35. Slightly below might get you a wintry start to a system coming in that's going to be cutting. It's going to be the same kind of pattern we'll be dealing with. Nothing has changed in terms of the fast Pacific jet, so I don't see anything, no big amplified storm coming in here that's going to give you a bunch of snow here to round out winter. But I will see you all again next year. We're going to start this up again in November with the next winter, which is the 2019-2020 winter. And we will get into that in November. We're going to have starting up the beach forecasts Memorial Day weekend, and we're going to have the baseball forecast coming up very shortly with the start of the Major League Baseball season. We have the Phillies and the Reading Fightins that will be showcased as usual on the baseball forecast page. But we're going to go into spring mode, out of winter mode, and go into spring mode and start focusing on the regular My Pocket Meteorologist alerts, not the winter stuff. Although if you do have the winter alerts and you did sign up for them, you'll still get any kind of alert-worthy stuff through the end of March, and that will continue through the period you paid for it. It went from November 1st through March 31st, so we'll end at that point. It'll automatically terminate. If you do want to resubscribe to the year-round alerts or the monthly alerts to get the thunderstorm information that we send out in real time as thunderstorms approach your region, you can do that on our homepage. Go to the homepage and it'll take you right to the My Pocket Meteorologist page where you can take advantage of that outside of the regular winter stuff. I'm EPAWA meteorologist Bobby Martrich. That is this week's edition of Weather Weeklies. We'll see you again in November. Take care.